Welcome everyone to the September 10, 2020 meeting of the Memphis Astronomical Society. I'm your host, Jeremy Veldman, and we've got another informative meeting for you tonight. We're going to talk about telescopes, give you some practical tips, guidance, advice, hopefully to help you get started in your journey. So be sure you pay attention to that. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them for those of you who are joining us live. But first, let me go ahead and share my screen. So just a few preliminaries here. First of all, we are the Memphis Astronomical Society, and we are a nonprofit public service organization promoting interest in education in astronomy and related sciences. And you can find us on our website, memphisastro.org. And of course, we're on social media. We have a Facebook group, and we're on Twitter, and of course on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Now over 2,200 subscribers. Want to thank everyone who has joined and is a part of our community. Once again, I hope you get a lot of value out of tonight's meeting, and thank you again for joining us, following us, and being a part of our community. Again, our website is memphisastro.org. If you would like to join our community and be added to our email list, just click on the join button, and there's two places you can do it. One is in the upper right, the join button, and then of course you see it on the lower left there. It'll bring you to a separate form, fill out your details, and yeah, you'll be instantly added to our community. If you're interested in becoming a member, the approval process is very quick now. We have several new members to announce tonight. We'll get to that in a second, but our community is growing, and we would love to have you as a part of our community if you're not already. And of course, you can always go into the website, joinmas.com, enter your name and email also. So either way, if you'd like to be added to our email list, just go to one of those two sites. Either go to our website, memphisastro.org, click the join button, or just go to joinmas.com. And of course, on our website, we have a calendar which outlays the events and the outreach activities for the month. We're back in action live with all of our public outreach events and observing sessions. And once again, we got a very busy month coming up. Get to that in a second. And next month is also very busy. So we're past the summer. Looks like skies are clearing, knock on wood. So stay tuned for announcements and for upcoming events. And speaking of which, tomorrow night, September 11, we are planning to be at Shelby Farms P5 parking area. And if you're coming south, I think it's south, my directions get screwed up here, off of Walnut Grove, and you take a left on Farm Road, the P5 parking area is your first right. And we have a wide open space there. It's actually across Hyde Lake from the Visitors Center. So we will be there tomorrow night, and the weather looks great. So we are planning to be there, expecting quite a turnout. So if you have a telescope and you'd like to come out, we would certainly love to have you come out. Also, before the observing session, we are planning to have a mentoring time period. So several of us are going to get there early, around 7 o'clock. And if you have a telescope and you need some help setting it up or learning how to use it, several experienced MAS members will be there on hand, and we'll be able to offer you some assistance. So again, we used to do this once a year around the holidays. The January meeting is typically the time to bring your telescope out. But we're looking to do this more regularly now at our Shelby Farms observing sessions once a month. So tomorrow night is a great opportunity. If you are local to Memphis, and if you have a telescope, and you need help setting it up, and whether it's polar alignment or using the go-to controller or slewing to things or just setting it up in general, several of us will be out there. So this is a great opportunity for you to get some one-on-one hands-on assistance. So be sure you plan for that tomorrow night. Again, we've had a great week of weather. Tomorrow looks favorable as well. So tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, September 11 at P5 parking area, South Hyde Lake, Shelby Farms. And another big event coming up, October the 2nd, is our Village Creek Star Party. And this has been on hiatus now for a couple of years, but we are planning to do this, if it's clear, Saturday, October the 2nd, And this is at Village Creek State Park near Wynne, Arkansas. It's a little over an hour's drive from Memphis. And we will have an indoor viewing at 7 o'clock, followed by an outdoor viewing at 8 o'clock. And this has historically been a semi-annual event. We do one in the spring and then we do one in the fall. And we've been either canceled or clouded out the last couple of years due to COVID and of course weather. So, but we're planning to be there October the 2nd. Now, we need telescopes. So again, if you're a member of our community or if you're a visitor and you have a telescope, we would love to have you bring it out and be a part of this. We need both low power, medium power, and high power telescopes. So we need several members to participate to make this event successful. So we need telescope operators. We also need guides, people to kind of, guide the group around to the different telescopes. So if you are available and able to participate, please send an email to Mark Matthews, and you see his email down there. And we'll send some more notices out about this also as the next couple of weeks unfold. You can see we had quite a turnout the last time we did this. Again, it was about 2 years ago that we did this. We had over 100 people there. And we usually meet for dinner around 5:30 at Delta Q in Forest City. So look for notices regarding this event. This is a big event, our Village Creek Star Party. So we will send more email notices out about this. And we also have several detailed documents about this as well, including directions on how to get there and kind of the map of the telescope layout and also the timeline for the event. So this is a well-planned and historically been a well-executed event. And, again, we haven't done this in a couple of years. So we're really hoping that this will be a success again this year. And of course, favorable skies pending. So we do have one scheduled October the 2nd. If it's clouded out, then we have a rain date in November. So we got 2 shots at this over the next couple of months. But tentatively mark your calendars for Saturday, October the 2nd, our semi-annual Village Creek Star Party, and look for notices regarding this. And again, let us know if you can participate and bring a telescope. And there's the information again. Okay. And for outreach requests, again, we have an outreach team now that is fielding all incoming requests. Sarita kind of runs the point for this. You can send an email to her right there. She's currently out of town. You can always email me as well, but we have an outreach team now that's fielding incoming requests. We got a lot of them coming up. We got a busy couple of months. So if you're interested in our services, then please send an email to Sarita and we'll see about getting you scheduled. Okay, we got several new members to announce tonight. And once again, I will not put you on the spot by calling you out, but I just wanted to collectively acknowledge you and welcome you to our group. So first of all, we have Gabriella Luna, and she was approved last month. So Gabriella, welcome to our group. Michael Lewis was also approved last month. Michael, welcome. Happy to have you as a part of the Memphis Astronomical Society. Patricia Horde was approved, as well as her husband, Keith. So Patricia and Keith, want to welcome you to the Memphis Astronomical Society. Thank you again for joining our community. As well as Blake Coleman, welcome. Karen Jordan, welcome to our community. Happy to have you as a part of the Memphis Astronomical Society. Courtney Mosser, again, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join our group. We're very happy to have you a part of our community. And William Frog, again, welcome to the Memphis Astronomical Society. And Chuck Marks, welcome, Chuck. Thanks for joining. Happy to have you a part of our community. Bert, I'm going to butcher this last name. I think the J is silent. But Bert, want to just thank you again for joining the Memphis Astronomical Society and welcome you to our group. And finally, Steve, you were actually approved yesterday. Again, the approval process works pretty quickly. So Steve Atkins, welcome to the Memphis Astronomical Society. So that's about 11 new members now. So I just want to take a moment here to just kind of verbally congratulate you and welcome you and thank you all for joining the Memphis Astronomical Society. We are happy to have you a part of our community. And of course, if you become a member, you get access to the Meteorite, which is our monthly newsletter. So be sure and check out this month's edition of the Meteorite. And we also have an astrophotography group meeting coming up later this month. And again, we do this once a month around the time of the full moon. And this is hosted by Rick Honey. And so this will be coming up in a couple of weeks, around September the 18th, at 7:00 p.m. So we'll post the link to this. This is a Zoom meeting. It'll be on our website. Again, memphisastro.org. So you can go there to find out more information. And if you've missed the last few meetings, you can always go to our YouTube channel, and we've recorded several of them there. We've been working on some image processing techniques. So be sure and check that out if you want to get a little more of a background of what we're doing. And yeah.
Jeremy, I don't mean to interrupt, but this next meeting, I think we're planning on kind of a backup approach and do something on how to get started in astrophotography. You don't need dedicated cameras and everything else to get started. So we'll go through some methods and options for just how to get hooked on that. So that it's cheaper than you think.
Yeah. And this is actually a meeting that I'm personally interested in. And, you know, yeah, you're right. A camera and a telescope is not necessarily the best way to start. Sometimes just a DSLR and a tripod and just doing nightscapes or landscape astrophotography is a great way to start. And that's personally what I'm interested in. So, you know, I'm looking forward to that meeting. I think it'll be right in line, certainly with what my personal goals are and how I would like to start. But really, anyone who's looking to get a background in astrophotography without breaking the bank, this should be a very informative meeting. So, yeah, be sure and check that out. Again, September the 18th. It's a couple weeks away. I believe it's actually a week from tomorrow. So, yeah, that'll be next Saturday, not tomorrow, but the following Saturday. So. Excellent. Okay. Also, we got we're finishing the year strong. Our next 3 meetings are going to be very informative, and I think we got some great content for you guys. Starting with October the 8th, we are going to be showing a pilot of a documentary film called Luminous, and without getting into the description, let me actually show you a kind of a brief clip here, a preview of what this film is going to be about.
After hundreds of years of everybody knowing about exploding stars, knowing that there could be new stars in the sky, nobody has ever been able to predict this.
A nova, a new star. That's what Larry Molnar is looking for.
1 in 10 million stars would go through this in a human lifetime.
It's much beyond a needle in a haystack. A needle at least looks different from the rest of the hay.
If you think about who out there is going to discover this star that's about to explode, Larry's not the most probable suspect.
My job is to get the students interested in science. Doesn't matter if we discover something big or if we discover something that turns out to be wrong.
He is deeply curious, someone who has that raw, just hunger to understand the cosmos.
If we see this star blow up, we're going to see what happened 1,000 years ago with our modern cameras.
Wow, this is just a few years away. Nobody's ever seen anything of this kind.
So suddenly we realize we're on a timeline here.
In 2022, we might be able to witness an explosive creation of a new star visible by the naked eye.
I think it takes a good deal of courage to step out there in front of other scientists who are going to do everything to essentially shoot it full of holes.
I still think that there are other explanations.
We don't think it's going to emerge.
I'm skeptical. I think it's a bold prediction.
Most predictions fail. If you make a really risky prediction that then fails, you lose everything.
It is extremely risky, can be very painful. You may waste all your life trying to understand something, and at the end of the day, you really realize that you don't get it.
Larry's working at the edge of knowledge. It's scary out there on the edge.
Okay, so again, this will be next Friday or the next MAS meeting. It's our October MAS meeting, and we're going to be doing this via Zoom call. We're going to be doing it virtually. Originally, we had planned to do this in person at the Mosh Planetarium, the Pink Palace. However, they have a mask mandate, and we kind of talked about this, and there were a few members of the board as well as the general membership that sort of indicated that if we were going to meet in person and masks were required, that they probably wouldn't come. So as a result of that, and there's also going to be a Q&A session after this this film. So the director and the producer, Sam Smartt, has requested that we have a Q&A session set up afterwards. And it's just easier to do that virtually rather than doing it in person. So again, we had kind of talked about this for several months, making this our more or less grand reopening after COVID. But COVID hasn't completely gone away. I know many of us have been vaccinated and we're ready to get back live and in person. I know I am. But it's still out there, and it's just simply not possible or feasible for us to meet in person and not do so without wearing masks. So the bottom line is it comes down to a choice of sitting in person with a mask on for 2 hours or watching this at home, either on your computer or on your television via HDMI. And we figured that that's probably going to be a better option. The other thing is it would alienate our virtual audience. So we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to view this and participate in this in as much comfort and convenience and safety as possible. So for that reason, we've decided not to do this in person. We are going to do this via Zoom call. So we will send a link out in the next couple of weeks, and I'm talking to Sam about this, and he will actually send a link out to us that we will send everyone else. But anyway, mark your calendars. This could be a very interesting film. It's a documentary film. Personally, I'm skeptical. I'm not sure you can predict a supernova 5 or 6 years in advance. But if he is right, it will be one of the greatest scientific predictions, maybe in my lifetime. So it is exciting. It is risky. And if anything else, you got to give him credit for having the courage to put himself out there and make this prediction and do it out of raw curiosity and insight and just a hunger to know really what's going on. So this should be interesting.
Jeremy, you might want to make note that this is at 7 p.m. and not our normal 8 p.m. meeting time.
Correct. So we're setting this an hour earlier because the film is 90 minutes long, and then there will be a 30-minute Q&A afterwards. So yeah, please note the time change. It is an hour earlier from our normally scheduled meetings. So yeah, well, again, we'll send notices out regarding that as well. But yes, it will be 7 p.m. Friday, October the 8th. I think it's the first October or the first Friday in October. So again, make note of that. And that is the documentary film Luminous. So yeah. And again, check out the Meteorite. We have a write-up on Larry, on Sam, and then also kind of a summary of the documentary and what it entails. So yep, 7 p.m., October the 8th. Okay, we also have fall elections coming up. And again, every year we form a nominating committee and solicit the general membership for interest in serving on the board. So that's coming up. The nominations will be opened at the November meeting. And then in December, we will essentially vote on the 10 board slots. So everything is in play. So if you're interested in running for a specific position, whether it's president or secretary or treasurer, VP of programs, VP observing, whatever, or if you just want to be on the board, let us know. And again, the membership committee has been formed, and they will start reaching out to some of the general membership to gauge interest. We've already had a couple people raise their hand and offer their services. So thank you for that. I've been president for a few years now. Very happy to step down if somebody else wants to step in and do this. I'm certainly happy to do it again another year, but if somebody really wanted it, you wouldn't necessarily get strong opposition from me. So be sure to keep that in mind. And if you're interested in running or just serving on the board, you know, we would certainly be interested. So reach out to the nominating committee and let us know your interest in serving on the board. I showed this last time. I'm not going to elaborate like I did, but we are looking to form smaller teams to handle specific tasks that we need to get done, and also to support some of the board members who have specific jobs, whether it's VP of programs or treasurer or publicity and marketing, as well as outreach. We have an outreach team already. So again, I'm not going to get into specifics right now like I did last meeting. However, for the finance team, we are looking for someone who has a working knowledge of QuickBooks. And basically, we're looking to get our accounts set up on QuickBooks. So if you or someone you know has a working knowledge of QuickBooks, please reach out to us. Rick is our current treasurer, and this doesn't have to be an ongoing thing necessarily, but if you could help us get set up in QuickBooks and manage our finances that way, I know it would make Rick's job a lot easier. Rick, do you want to comment on that as far as what you're looking for?
That's it, Jeremy. I just need to figure out how to set up the schedule of accounts and get everything set up. Once we do that, then you're right, it all gets to be a lot easier. I just need help. This is not something I'm familiar with.
Yep. So again, reach out to us, whether it's you or somebody you know who's got a working knowledge of QuickBooks to handle this one time. So, and you can email me if you're interested in serving on one of these teams. Again, we're always looking for programming ideas. We're always looking for speakers, whether it's you yourself or someone you know who might want to present to the MAS. Reach out to us. Of course, you know, we're always looking for people who have telescopes and can work at events, whether it's public outreach or things like the Village Creek Star Party, for instance. So if you're interested in serving on one of these teams and just making your services available whenever, shoot me an email and I'd love to hear from you. Okay, for everyone tonight, again, I will have these two documents in the link of the description below. And that is our September sky map, as well as our membership application. Of course, you can just go to our website, memphisastro.org, and fill out the form there. But you can also download our membership application and send it in to info@memphisastro.org, so you can become a member that way as well. And with that, I will go ahead and just jump right into our main program for tonight. Now, we normally do this in December and January, right around the time of the holidays, but we're kind of changing things up this year, and I'll explain why down the road. But we want to make sure we cover telescopes and hopefully answer some of your questions more frequently than once a year. So tonight we're going to be attempting to give you some practical tips for selecting a telescope, as well as getting started in astronomy. So this is going to be part theory, part application, and then kind of also part loosely structured. So if you're on tonight and you have questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. And of course, we'll have a Q&A session afterwards as well. And hopefully we can get any and all of your questions or concerns addressed. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Freddy, and he's going to kick it off with kind of a background in telescopes. So Freddy, take it away.
Thanks, Jeremy. Let me share my screen. I think. Do you see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay. Well, this is based And as Jeremy said, we used to do that for December or January. And the presentation was made for buying a telescope for Christmas. So we are going to go ahead and then we can change the title and decide. This is based on the Optics and Telescope short course in astronomy by Bill Bosler. And let's see how this goes. So basically we have two types of telescope. Telescopes that use glass, like the refractors, and telescopes that use mirrors, and the hybrid of telescopes that use glass and mirrors. So let's just first step onto what we call the refractive telescope, and it uses a glass as a lens. So basically what you have here is your light rays come parallel from the faraway star or planet, okay? And then they are focused in one specific point that is called the focal point, okay? And this is due to the fact that once the rays go through the crystal surface made on this shape, they will focus on a point, okay? However, it will be a very slow image, so what we need then is to make the image bigger by the use of another optical element, and then your eye will be on this. Sorry, do you see my mouse? Okay, again, the rays come parallel, and the glass infrared telescope diverge the rays to a focal point, but that focal point is too small, so you need another device on the back that is called eyepiece, and it will set the rays parallel so your eye can see it. Okay, the image is inverted, and you have the ability of increase the size and the power of the telescope by changing the eyepiece on the back. And these type of telescopes have some defects, because as you see here, we are assuming that all the rays would converge on a point, but due to the physics, that is not true. Depending on the color, the focal point of one color or the other will be further away from what we expect. So this is called chromatic aberration. And if you have a telescope that has these, when you point at the moon or a planet, you also will see like a glow around it, purple or a bluish green, bright around the object you are watching. So to correct that, what is done is you do a compound lens with two surfaces, okay, and they make the rays go together on one place. Of course, you have to, as you see, you will have to make these two surfaces be very, very equal to the other, so there is exact alignment and there is no more distortion or loss of light. So that makes the refractors expensive and heavy because this is glass. So, but this will give you much better views than a simple lens telescope. Okay, as this is going to be a very fast review. Now we talk about the telescope that have mirrors. That is the reflector telescope. In the reflector telescope, you have a mirror that reflects the light coming from your star again on parallel rays to a focal point. This is supposed to be a parabolic shape. So the light comes here and converges on a focal point. As you see here, this is a mirror. So there is no color aberration. The telescope by itself do not produce aberration in the colors. It might produce aberration if the surface is not perfectly made. It will suffer what is called coma. So the mirror must be parabolic, and in some cases, depending on the size of the mirror, you can do it spherical instead of parabolic. One good thing is easy to make large mirrors. There is only one surface to fear, and there is no need for transparency, that the glass is one of the defects of the glass. and the mirror can be supported from the back. So it's easier. You can have bigger mirrors, heavier mirrors, and you will still be able to support it from the back. Okay, so as you see, oh, sorry, let me go to the previous image. As you see, the focal point is inside the telescope. So, well, this won't work because if you are going to see through that, you are blocking the light that's coming in front of you. So our friend Newton designed a telescope called Newtonian telescope, where he puts a small mirror here in a diagonal of 45 degrees, and that telescope diverges the light rays towards the outside of the telescope on one side. In this case, you also use an eyepiece here, and then you have a reflector telescope. Again, the reflector telescope has the only constriction that this should be a very fine surface, very polished, so you don't have distortions and you don't lose too much light. For the reflector telescope, you will need a finder because you are looking at the telescope sideways and you are pointing it straight up. So you will use a small finder scope on the side of the telescope. So you will move your head toward the finder scope, put the center in the object in the center of the finder, and then you can go back to the telescope and watch your object. So the tube of a telescope is more manageable because you can have a longer focal length in a small package than a refractor, and it's lighter. Okay. Normally, in these cases, the focal length is no more than f5 or f8. Okay. If you have a very big mirror and you will have a low center of mass where we are pointing up, and that means that your telescope become a Dobsonian. One bad thing is that this telescope, you have two surfaces that need to be aligned, and that is called collimation. So, but once you learn the basic principle of collimation, you will do it in 10 minutes and you will be ready to observe. And now a variation of the reflector is a Cassegrain, where you the secondary mirror that used to be a diagonal and sending the light this way, it returns the light back to the center of the telescope at the back, and that increases due to this secondary increases the focal length, okay, and give you more powerful, more magnification on the telescope. This exact type of telescope is not very popular. It's mostly telescope for research, but we will see in a second, I mean, another design that is very popular, and is the Smith-Cassegrain telescope. On the Smith-Cassegrain, you also have a mirror, and you also have a center hyperbolical secondary lens. The light is reflected and goes to the back, but as you see, this is very amplified, but this is a piece of crystal with a special shape. And why is that? Well, the parabolic mirror is not parabolic. In this case, it's spherical because it's easier to produce that in mass. So you have a spherical mirror and a corrector lens in front, and then you see the objects on the back of the telescope. This gives you, due to this hyperbolical mirror, gives long focal length. In this case, you can have a focal length that is 10 times the size of the objective without trouble in a very compact package. One of the most popular designs of the telescope is the Meade and Celestron, the Meade-Cassegrains, 8 inches, that they have 8 inches in diameter, and they have 800 inches in focal length. They give you very good images, not as good as a refractor, but very good images, and they are very popular. They are very versatile. Now, what do we need to know about telescope? The first thing is magnification, and this is overrated. especially in advertisement from cheap telescopes. If you go to what we used to call a department store, now is Costco or Walmart, any kind of those stores, you will see a small telescope in a box that says 800 power. And you say, wow, 800 power, that's a lot. Well, not really, it won't work. And the power is defined by the focal length of the objective. The focal length of the objective is the distance between the objective, the objective and the point where the focal rays converge, the light rays converge. So you divide this by the focal length of the eyepiece, that is the distance between the focal point and the eyepiece, and that will give you the power of the telescope you're using in that moment. So if you change the eyepiece, you change the power of the telescope. So one thing that I need to mention here is even when you have, by example, with a C8, if you go tomorrow to Sherwood Farms, you will see mine. I have a C8. It has a 2000 millimeter focal length. I never use it more than 100 to watch the moon or to watch planets. Okay. So in another explanation of power, a typical example, we have a telescope that has 48 inches of focal length and is used with a 1/2 inch eyepiece. So you divide 48 inches of focal length by 5 times, 0.5 times inches, it will give you 96 times, nearly 6 power. Even when magnification is theoretically unlimited, there is a practical limit. It's about 50 times per inch of diameter of the telescope. And that is due to the fact that the atmosphere is not totally transparent and there are currents and everything is moving. There are currents moving up there. And it is like a sea of air. So it's moving all around, and this is the practical limit, 5 times per inch of diameter. So if you go to a store and it says that a 60 millimeter telescope give you 800 power, you know that they are lying. And as example, a 2 1/4 refractor give you a maximal useful power of 2.225 times 50, 113x. That is the absolute maximum. And you won't be able to see at this power unless you have very good atmospheric conditions. The seeing has to be very, very good. Okay, that is a quick review of the types of telescopes. Now we need to talk about something important too, the mounts. They are very important, and there are basically 2 types of mounts. The mounts that move in altazimuth, that move up and down and back and forth. Okay, they are simple, but not recommended for deep sky astrophotography because it will make the star rotate. And it requires 2 simultaneous motion to track an object. So if you have an object, that a star that is going in the sky like this, with one of these telescopes, you have to go up to the right, up to the right, up to the right. So there is 2 movements to track it. Okay, and this is one type of telescope that is motorized for ALTAS, and this is another type of mount for ALTAS, but it's called Dobsonian because of its inverter. And as you see here, you have your heavy mirror on this side, you have a long tube, and you have your base here. This optical tube pivots around this axis to go up and down, and then rotates around this axis to go east-west or left-right. And here we have another example of telescope in ALTAS mount. The other type of mount is that you call equatorial mount. In this case, the polar axis of the mount, this axis that you see here. Imagine this is a line that goes all the way down and then all the way down to the North Pole, celestial pole. So this mount allows you to rotate around that we call right ascension, and this is the lock. and also allows you to move on declination. So if you are going to watch an object, you start with the object and the telescope will rotate with the object with only one movement. Okay, in this case, this mount is tracking the sun, as you see here, and it tracks very good. You know, once you get a line, it tracks very good. And even when here said that this mount is recommended for beginners, in my estimation, we should start with a Dobsonian mount to learn the sky first, and then move to equatorial mount. There are other types of mount that are variations over these. You have a push-to mount. It's a mount, an Altas mount with a computer that works as a guide for positioning the telescope. So what you do here, this is that push-to. This is a very old controller from Orion. You align the telescope, tell it a couple of stars, and it will be aligned. And then you will tell it, I want to see the Orion Nebula. And once you punch the Orion Nebula, it will tell you with two arrows, with two arrows. Sorry, I didn't show you the correct. Let me do this first. The push to mount is a mount that will tell you how to move. The go to mount is a mount with a computer and motors that will move and track an object once you have selected. And then there is a Wi-Fi Celestron series that what you need is an alignment, and then you can manage the telescope with your tablet or your phone, and you will be able to sit and control the telescope without touching it. And then here is the example of each of those. This is the go-to mount. Meet is one of the examples of this. Then you have what I was telling you, the telescope from Orion. You see M42 Orion Nebula, and it says, hey, you gotta go left and then go down to center the Orion Nebula on this scope. And this is an example of the Wi-Fi, where you have a simulation of the sky. You just tap on the object you want to go, and then you click on go to, and it will move the telescope there. It's a variation of the go to mount. There are many mounts right now that are compatible with this feature. And controllers, there is a new controller called ASR Pro that allows you to control your telescope and your cameras for imaging from your tablet. It's very nice. So let's talk about the merits of the various types of telescope. The refractor, you don't need to align. That is high power. It's limited to a small size because the glass is heavy, it's costly, and it's best for small bright objects, moon, planets, double stars, and star clusters. Star clusters through very good refractor are something that you shouldn't miss. Okay, it's something you should see through. They are good also on a very good Dobsonian or Smith-Cassegrain, but the refractive view of a star cluster is something you cannot equal with anything. The reflector need alignment, what we say collimation, and eventual resurfacing of the mirror. Of course, the mirror is pointing upwards without anything that protects it. So it gets dust with time, and humidity also comes from the bottom of the telescope if it's sitting on grass, for example. And with the time, 5, 4, or more years, you will need to resurface the mirror. Large is practical. You can have a 20-inch mirror on a Dobsonian, and you can, with 2 people, move it, install it, and be observing in, I don't know, half an hour. Jeremy may tell us better about that. These are best for dim objects because they can gather much more light than a refractor, okay, for nebula, galaxies, and faint clusters. Not that you cannot use on the moon, but if you are looking at a full moon with one of these scopes, you better don't watch it too much because it will not hurt you. It will not damage your vision, but it will blind you for a few minutes before you can watch again. Continuing, now we talk about the hybrids. They are more power in a compact package, 8-inch diameter, 17-inch long, but 800 inch focal length. They are higher priced than reflectors, but not than refractors. These are very good for mass production. You can create a mirror with a spherical grind, and it's easier to produce in mass settings. And then for creating the corrector, it's created in a vacuum with something that will warm up the glass, and then they have a system that will put vacuum on one side and high pressure, low pressure on the other side, and the glass will slowly get to the desired shape that you need, and it's easier to produce. These need collimation, but as you see, this is a closed system. And it's so closed that this was a telescope that I got once in December, and I never used it before, and there was a lot of humidity inside. But as it's a closed system, when it went to below zero that December, here that was in Shirley Farms one night, the telescope froze inside. I couldn't do anything else but to keep it and save it for another chance, another opportunity. These are more sensitive to humidity because, as you see, there is a large glass surface pointing upwards. It will get cold, and if you don't have a dew shield in front of it, it will condense and your night will be ruined unless you can warm it up and remove the humidity, the dew condensed on the corrector plate. Well, we have talked about telescope, and as this was in focus for Christmas shopping, there are something that we want to notice about if you are going to get into astronomy and don't want to spend too much. You can start watching with binoculars. Everybody has a binocular at home, and they are normally relatively good quality optics. Many of them have a hole or a threaded piece that will allow you to mount a piece like this, an L. This will go on the binocular, and this can go onto any photography tripod. So you can mount on a tripod, and you can share the views with the binoculars with the family too. They are easy, and they are very good to learn the skies, the constellations. In the best options are 7 times by 50 millimeter diameter, or 8 times by 56 millimeter diameter. One of the best at the time is a Cometron, Celestron Cometron, that is 7 by 50. There are some binoculars that come with a camera. Well, the camera is not useful for astronomy because it is not sensitive enough. And there are also the Nikon Aculum, those are 7 by 50. And if you want to spend a lot of money, you can buy a telescope with a stabilizer. And those are bigger binoculars, but you cannot see them. Even if your hands move, the binoculars maintain the image steady. Those are expensive, okay? So let's go now with some tips. Please beware of department store telescope or reflector with your short tubes. Reflectors with short tubes. You will see some of these on the department stores. They will be 4 and 5 millimeters, and they will tell you a focal distance that is much more larger than the real distance or the reflector. These are made with a special lens inside on the eyepiece holder, on the focuser. Those are not very good, so stay away from those two. Okay, and one thing, if you are going to buy a telescope, be sure that it has a straight through finder. This is better for learning the sky and learning to how to point that telescope. Then later, if you want, you can buy a different type of finder for a bigger telescope. Again, consider a good pair of binoculars that for the same price are as cheap as a very cheap telescope and bad quality. You will enjoy them much more. 7x50 or 10x50 giving you great views. If you are going to give this to a kid, then the 7x50 should be the choice. One thing, there is no substitute for optical or mechanical quality, price. So if you want good quality, optical or mechanical, you have to pay for it. So don't get caught in those department store telescope with a very cheap price and offers of big magnification. Again, magnification is not the only thing to look for on a telescope. As you heard me before, you always don't go beyond 100 for planets. And by example, if you go by over 80, you will see easily Saturn rings. And if you go to 60, you will have the moon in the whole field of view of your eyepiece, and you will be able to see craters and everything. And another thing, the rack and pinion focuser, be sure that it's a good quality one. There are many that are made of plastic, and those don't work very good, and they are stiff. So when you are trying to focus something, it will move the image on the telescope back and forth, and it will be very hard to focus with them. One more page of tips. Again, the mount is as important as the scope itself. If you are going to buy a telescope on one side and a mount on the other, my suggestion will be that you spend half on one and half on the other. That will give you a balance between what you are getting. If you plan to buy something, telescope, and then plan to upgrade it, well, then spend more on the mount than on the telescope. Normally, what you do, or what I have done, I have a good mount now, and I've been changing telescopes. So it's important that you have a good mount. One very important tip, go to the observing session of MAS. It's free. And this year, we are starting with a program to help people that do not know how to operate telescope, go earlier, and we can help them to align the telescope and setting it up for our observing sessions. One other thing, aperture is king, but don't be caught on the aperture fever that where you want, oh, I have an 8, I want a 12 now, and then you have one at 15, and then you have a 20, and you are spending a lot of money on that. The best telescope is the one that gets most used. Normally, a small telescope are used much more than big scopes, and this is really true. I have a Dobsonian, it's a 10-inch, but it's very heavy. So I prefer to take out the mount, the tripod, and the C8 than that Dobsonian. It's small, it's lighter, and it's even when you don't think, it's easier to set up because it's lighter. One more thing. Join virtual clubs. There are several virtual clubs on the internet, and you can, well, MAS is now a virtual club, and to be honest, but there are good virtual clubs where you can post questions and get information on what you want to learn or what you want to do. And one thing, avoid the temptation of photography. Well, I know it's hard, especially with cell phones. We will talk about that later. So you decided to take the plunge and got a big pair of binoculars or telescope. What is next? Well, a good start is to read the articles on the MAS webpage. memphisastro.org, forms, new scope, help PDF. That is a very good article written in the past by our member Steve Bill Bosler. And it shows very good tips about the new telescope and how to operate it. Get a star chart like the one Jeremy showed before, and learn to use that, and learn to use a star map. Again, go to the observing sessions on MAS and bring your scope or your binoculars. The other thing, you can attend our meetings or watch them on YouTube. We are recording them, so you can see them later. And about astrophotography, well, there is an increase of astronomy, and NASA has pages, and CosmoQuest has pages. Skymaps.com give you a monthly sky map. So you can go to those, visit those, learn from them. Okay. Then tablets and smartphones, there is good be cheap and free software for astronomy. And you can use your smartphone to get pictures like this. This was a picture I took of the Venus transit in May 2012. This little point that you see here, that is Venus transiting the sun. It was taken on the eyepiece of my telescope. At the time, it was a 66 millimeter telescope. And I got that picture too. And also you can take pictures of the moon. This is the Earthshine. This is the moon just starting on the quarter. And as you see, this part is overexposed because this is the light from the moon, from the sun reflected on the moon directly to us. And this part is the light that hits the Earth, goes to the moon, and gets reflected back to the Earth. That is the reason why you have a difference in brightness. But you see, you can take good pictures with your smartphone. And that's it. I hope you liked. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Freddy. Does anyone have any questions for Freddy right now? You can also enter them in the chat, and of course, we'll open it up at the end of the meeting as well. So does anybody have any specific questions? Otherwise, we'll move on here. Okay, very good. Thank you, Freddy. Excellent.
Sure, my pleasure.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Just a second. So for the kind of the second segment here, I'm calling this segment A Tale of Two Telescopes. And instead of showing you some slides, I thought I would show you a demonstration of two telescopes that I own. Before I do, quick background. About 20 years ago, after I started working, I decided to kind of get back into astronomy. I tabled it for a while when I went to school and decided what I wanted to do. Eventually graduated. I'm not a broke college student anymore. Started working as an engineer, had some discretionary income, wanted to get back into the hobby of astronomy, had no background at all, and a lot of choices to make regarding telescopes. So I knew I wanted a bigger telescope so that I could gather more light and go after fainter deep sky stuff. So I do have a case of aperture fever, which I'll talk about in a minute, a little later. But anyway, long story short, I did some of the research on several different telescope options, from Dobsonians to Schmidt-Cassegrains to reflectors, refractors, and got brain cramp and didn't take any action and basically stopped. And it would be another 13 years before I actually pulled the trigger. And by that time, I had found the Memphis Astronomical Society, joined the club, became an active board member, and heard of somebody who was selling a used telescope and decided to pick that one up. Turns out my first telescope was a 20-inch, as most of you know. So I dove in and went right after the big sucker, and I did use it a lot, and I still do. However, I picked up a couple of smaller telescopes also used down the road, and kind of as a complementary to my big gun, which is my 20-inch Dobsonian. The one on the left is a 10-inch Dobsonian. The one on the right is a 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain on a fork mount clock drive. And I'm going to show you both of these telescopes here in a second. But I'm answering the specific question of what telescope should I buy as my first telescope? So if you're watching this and you think you're interested in astronomy, you think you want to get into this, you don't currently own a telescope, and you're looking for some recommendations, I'm going to attempt to answer this with specific reasoning. Now, it's purely subjective. Everybody has a different set of criteria. Everybody has a different set of goals. But in general, I try to distill it down to some of the common points that we all share. Number one is you want a telescope that you're going to use most frequently. Number two, easy to use and not as complicated. And also, number three, I would say less steps and less cumbersome to actually get out and use. So again, to try and answer that specific question, if I'm new to astronomy and I may be interested, and I'm looking for a recommendation for a specific telescope, here are two telescopes that I own, and I'm just going to show you a demonstration of each one of these.
I'm Jeremy Veldman, and I'm going to show you why I think either an 8-inch or a 10-inch Dobsonian is the best choice for a beginner telescope. So first of all, it's easy to store and to transport to a dark sky site. You can see it here in the back of my compact SUV. I drive a RAV4. I've got a 10-inch Dobsonian, and it fits perfectly in the back here. The tube is just long enough. I can also fit the base, and I can fit my eyepieces and all my other accessories. So it's ideal when you're transporting it to a dark sky site, or if you're taking a road trip. If you want to go to a star party or something like that, you have plenty of room for the telescope as well as all the accessories and your luggage. So it's pretty versatile. Now, let me show you how long it takes to set this up. And you can actually time this if you want. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the tube out and just set it somewhere for a second. Set it off to the side. And then I'm just going to take the base and just set it wherever I think I might need to for observing for tonight. Grab the tube. Set it down. And now it's got two springs on the side here with strings that just latch on to the screws on the side. Take the cover off. That's it. I'm ready to go. Now, of course, I got to put my eyepieces and my viewfinder, my tail rad, and some of my other accessories on. Got to work on collimation. But as far as getting the initial setup going, that's all it takes. What did that take? Maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes? So let's talk about some of the other accessories and items that you might want to take when you're out observing. So first of all, I recommend a small step ladder. And this is good if you have, let's say, children or shorter people that may want to get to the eyepiece. Now, of course, if you're taller, you may not need this, but the focuser and the eyepiece goes on the side of the telescope. So it's fairly easy for me to look through it. But if you got smaller children, you want to show them, this is good for that. Also, you can use it as a chair. So if I'm sitting down, for instance, tonight Jupiter will be rising due east, and this is perfect if I want to look at something closer to the horizon, maybe 30 to 45 degrees. So that doubles as a stool. Also, you can use it as a table to put some of your accessories on. You know, here's the cover to the telescope, or maybe your pocket atlas, anything like that. You could set it on there. So it doubles as a table as well as a stool. Another thing you're going to want is a good chair, good lounge chair. So if you're going to be out for the evening observing, and you may want to have times where you sit down and get comfortable. Again, you can't put a price on comfort, especially when you're out for a long evening observing. Now this is kind of a luxury chair, but I tell you, it's awfully nice. You want to just sit and take a break, look at the sky, have a pair of binoculars, you can use those as well. So get yourself a good lounge chair. That's always a good accessory. Another thing you're going to want, now I do have another chair, and I just picked this one up. This is a chair specific for observing. And I got this, you can get this on Scope Stuff. I just picked this up on B&H Photo. There's some other websites out there. But it's an adjustable observing chair. All you do is pull it out, and the stool actually adjusts up and down depending on the height of your telescope. So for instance, say I'm looking at something low on the horizon, maybe Omega Centauri. When it's out, it's pretty low. You know, my telescope's gonna be fairly low. I can just adjust the stool down if I want to look at it, and then I can just sit here and stare at it. In contrast, if I'm looking at something closer to the horizon or to the zenith, let's just say M13 at certain times of the year, the Great Globular Cluster can be almost straight up in constellation Hercules. I just adjust the stool up, and once again, depending on the height and where my telescope is oriented, I can just sit here and stare at it. So this is a nice piece of equipment to have. Again, if you don't have it, you're going to be crouching down and bending down all the time, or you know, bending over with your back, and that can put a lot of strain on both your back and also your legs. It can really wear you out. So again, consider picking this up. This is an adjustable observing chair. Another item you're going to want to pick up is a foldable table, and you can pick this up at Walmart or one of those places. This is essential also for putting your eyepieces and some of your other accessories, maybe your star charts, observing books, just whatever. I bring a cooler sometimes. Well, I bring a cooler all the time. So, but a table is pretty nice to have when you're out observing. I usually just set it right near the telescope. Of course, I'm going to need my eyepieces, and I have a TeleView bag. You don't need 100 eyepieces. In fact, all you need is maybe 1 or 2 to really get out and observe and enjoy the night. So I've got a few. I've got a good low power, a couple of good high power, medium power. My go-to has been my 20mm Explore Scientific. That's usually what I start out with. I've also got a 24mm and a 13 ethos that I use for kind of the medium power stuff. So there's my eyepieces, and then I've got my observing box, my telescope box, whatever you want to call it, and I'll show you in a second what's in here. But basically my accessories and my eyepieces, and of course I'm gonna get my Sky and Telescope Pocket Atlas. Now this is a book you can order. I don't know if they still make it or not. They call it a Pocket Atlas, but it's not really I don't know how you can fit this in your pocket, but it's got all the sky charts I want, all the constellation maps, as well as all the deep sky objects, anything I want to look for throughout the course of the night. So anything that I haven't gotten memorized yet, I'm going to want to look up. So I'll put that on my table as well. Now, a lot of people use Stellarium. You're going to see a talk in a second on Stellarium. Great program. I personally don't use it as much. I'm still kind of old school, I guess, in the fact that I use a book. But if you get something comparable to this, it has all of the sky charts and everything else that you want, all the constellation maps, any of the deep sky objects, anything you want to look for. So it's really an essential tool. So anyway, that's it. I'm basically set now. So I'm going to go ahead and finish getting my telescope set up by putting my accessories on. And the first thing I'm going to put on is my right angle viewfinder. That just goes right on the side of the telescope. Take the lens caps off, and this will help me find stuff. The second thing is my Telrad, and this is my go-to piece of equipment. A Telrad, just you turn it on, it puts a little 3-ring target in the center of it, and you can look up at the night sky and find anything. So very essential. Without it, it'd be hard for me to find anything. So I use a Telrad on all my telescopes. And of course, finally, I'm going to put in my one of my eyepieces. In this case, I usually start off with my 20mm Explore Scientific. It's a good power eyepiece. And I start out with low power because it has a wider field of view, and that will help me find things, as well as get my telescope properly collimated. So that's it. I'm basically set now. So I've got my eyepiece and the focuser, I've got my right angle viewfinder, and I've got my Telrad. So I'm good to go. Now tonight I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of an eyepiece, I'm actually going to use something called a Bino viewer. And like the name implies, it has two eyepiece holders instead of just one. So instead of a Cyclops view, which is what you would get through an eyepiece, you're basically going to get a telescope view like you would, or a binocular view like you would through a pair of binoculars. So this is another accessory you may want to consider getting. Now, it does split the light beam and it does dim the object slightly, but for brighter objects like the planets, like Jupiter, which is what we're going to look at tonight, or the moon, even some of the brighter deep sky objects, it doesn't really matter. So, and two eyes are better than one, right? If you have a bino view on an object, sometimes it can be more comfortable, more relaxing when you're observing, and it can also maybe give you a better perspective. So tonight we're going to use a bino viewer. It's got two, in this particular case, it's got two eyepieces. Now, to get a bino viewer, in order to get it to work, you got to have two of the same eyepiece. So in this case, we're using an ultra flat field, 18mm, 65-degree field of view eyepiece on each one. They're made by APM. But basically, the bino viewer just goes right into the side of the telescope, like so. And when I'm ready to go, Jupiter's going to rise again about due east, southeast tonight. And this is great for planetary stuff. So just take the eyepiece covers off, and when I'm ready to go, I just adjust them to my eyes, and I can see just really spectacular detail on anything that I'm looking at. So it's really great for doting on objects like planets, like Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, the moon, again, even some of the brighter objects. So brighter deep sky objects. So bino viewer, that's what we're going to work on tonight. All right, I'm set up and I'm ready to go for the night. Now, why do I like a Dobsonian as a good starter scope? Well, first of all, like I showed you, it's easy to store and transport, fits easily in the back of my compact SUV. Also, it's quick to set up, less than 5 minutes, which is to your benefit because you're going to use it more frequently. The less steps there are and the less time it takes and the less cumbersome it is to set up a telescope, typically the more frequently you're going to use it. Also, it's easy to find stuff with it. It's a very simple mount. It just goes up and down and back and forth. Again, it's a Dobsonian mount. So if I want to find something, all I got to do is use my Telrad or my viewfinder, and usually I can find it pretty quickly. So I got my bino viewer if I want to use a bino view. I've got eyepiece holders, so it's versatile in that I can use either a regular eyepiece or in this case a bino viewer. It has a wide enough mirror. This is a 10-inch Dobsonian, so that means the mirror is wide enough and has enough surface area where it can gather enough light where it's good for deep sky objects. If I'm out at a dark sky site, I can see detail in star clusters, galaxies. So pretty much anything you're going for, whether it's planetary or deep sky, you can usually get with either an 8-inch or a 10-inch. Now I do own other telescopes. I have a 20-inch version, Dobsonian also, which of course I try to get out to a dark sky site as often as I can. Gathers more light. You're going to see a lot more detail in fainter objects like galaxies. But this is the telescope I use most frequently. And again, this one I only need one person. I can set it up by myself, easy to set up, break down, take home when I'm done observing. The 20-inch, I need two people. It's much more involved. So, you know, this telescope is the one that I use most frequently. I own several telescopes, but I use this 10-inch Dobsonian probably the most frequently out of all of them. So it's a great option. Now, what are some of the downsides? Collimation. Anytime you have a Dobsonian telescope, you got to make sure that the primary mirror and the secondary mirror are properly aligned with the focuser. Not going to cover that tonight, but collimation is certainly an issue with Dobsonian telescopes. The other thing is it doesn't track. So I've got to keep moving it every couple of seconds whenever I'm honed in on an object. I do have telescopes that track. Obviously, you've seen some of the Schmidt-Cassegrains that have either a go-to mount or a clock drive. So let me show you an example of one of those telescopes. All right, so now I got my bino viewer in my 10-inch Dobsonian, and I'm looking at Jupiter. So bino viewer, of course, means I got two eyes going instead of one. So I can use both eyes, kind of like a binocular. That's why they call it a bino viewer. So now get a chance to really see what Jupiter looks like with two eyes instead of one. Wow. Absolutely spectacular. So I can really see the banding structure on the surface now. I can see the 4 Jovian moons, the 4 Galilean moons very clearly. Again, bino viewer with a 10-inch Dob. Absolutely spectacular. By contrast, this is my 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope on an equatorial fork wedge. So obviously you got to be in shape to handle that telescope. Now they do have carts, basically three leg carts, for lack of a better way to describe it, that you can put underneath the tripod and then more easily roll it in and out of your driveway. I am looking to get one of those, but obviously it's a handful if you're going to carry it by hand. All right, it's a good Jupiter night. It's a beautiful night, clear skies. It actually rises just over those trees, about due east from here, in a little over an hour when the sun goes down. It's about 7:30 p.m. right now. So the first thing I want to do is, of course, polar align my scope. And I'll do that by just unlocking one of the clutches here, lining it up as best as possible. And I want to make sure that my tripod is level. And there's a little bit of guesswork involved here. Again, I'm not being very precise, because tonight is just kind of quick and dirty observing, not doing any astrophotography or anything like that. All I'm doing is just basically polar aligning as best as I possibly can so that I can eye Jupiter and then have the scope actually track, so I don't have to move the telescope all the time. So this is a little bit more cumbersome to handle, but the advantage of a telescope like this over my 10-inch Dob is that it tracks. So it's good for, let's just say, doting on one object. Well, so tonight is a good night, a good example of that, where we've got Jupiter and Saturn out. The planets are nearing opposition, so it's a good time to be viewing them. So a telescope like this it's a good option for just focusing maybe on one object, whether you're doing astrophotography or just regular observing. So, but anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and do my polar alignment as best as I possibly can here. And it's still light out, so I don't have a chance to spot Polaris, which I will in about 30 to 45 minutes. But I can at least do some of the preliminary steps as far as getting the telescope set up. Of course, I need my Telrad. Never leave home without it. This is how I find things. And this is the Telrad base, so it just very easily fits on top of the telescope here. I use a Telrad, of course, for all of my telescopes, as most people do. So I have a right angle adapter for my 2-inch eyepieces. So tonight I'm going to be using 24 millimeter. I might go up to 13, but this is what I use for my 2-inch eyepieces. And there's just a cap on the end here, which comes off, it just pulls off, and then this just screws on the end here. So I'll do that a second, pretty easily. Again, that's where my eyepieces go. All right, I'm going to start out tonight with a 24 millimeter Explore Scientific eyepiece, 82 degree field of view. So I bought this one used, and of course that just goes into my adapter like so. And of course I'm going to take the cover off of the front of the scope. So this is an f10, again 10-inch primary mirror, and it's got a 2500 millimeter focal length, long focal length, which is good when you're looking at planetary stuff, which we're going to be doing tonight, or if you're doing, of course, astrophotography. So if you're really focusing in on brighter objects and want to see details, then a longer focal length telescope like this one is actually pretty good for that. All right, it's a little after 8 o'clock. Jupiter is rising. Far enough above the horizon now where we can get a good look at it. Polaris should be out, so we are ready to start our polar alignment. All right, the key with polar alignment, of course, is finding Polaris. I got a view of Polaris right over the roof of my house. My garage, the back of my garage faces due north, so I'm going to use my viewfinder, and I pretty much got it already. And of course I have my Telrad on, so I should be able to spot it. My telescope is off by just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and move it. I'm cheating a little bit by moving the base. You can adjust the screws on the bottom to go back and forth. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it by hand just for the sake of time here. So I should be able to start spotting it in my eyepiece. It's got to go just a little bit over that way. Adjust the arm up and down a little bit. Okay, so now it's pretty much in the center of my viewfinder. It should be in the center of my Telrad. Gotta use the glasses. Yep, there it is. And I've got it in my eyepiece as well. So again, it's not perfect, but for the purposes of tonight, when we're just going to be looking at Jupiter, it's good enough. All right, once my telescope is polar aligned, I'm going to take a portable battery. Again, you can get one of these at Walmart, Lowe's, wherever. And then I got a cord, power supply, and one end just plugs into the battery, similar to the adapter in your car. And then the other end is just going to plug right into the clock drive of the telescope. It has a DC drive. And that way, when I focus on an object like Jupiter tonight, it'll track all night. That way I don't have to move the telescope all the time like I do with my Dobsonian, and it will only be in the eyepiece for a few seconds. This telescope will track on an object all night. That way I can just sit and stare, walk away from the telescope, come back, whatever. So that's the real advantage of this type of telescope. All right, now it's time to go Jupiter hunting. It's high enough up now, getting bright, so we're going to go ahead and find it now that our scope is properly polar aligned. And to find Jupiter, all I'm going to do is release this clutch and turn it this way. I'm going to release the other clutch, and I'm going to use my Telrad, of course, to start honing in on it. A little bit of guesswork involved here, but really all I got to do is center the target over the planet Jupiter, and that should be it. So I'm going to just tweak it now a little bit until it's in the center of the target. Check my viewfinder. Looks pretty good, so now it should be in my eyepiece if I did this correctly. And there it is. Now I'm going to adjust my eyepiece by turning it so that it's not on an angle. So that's really the last thing that I do. I just turn my eyepiece now so that I can actually see. So now the eyepiece is in the right position so that I can just look through it. And again, it's a little bit off, but that's okay because I can just move it here a minute until I get it just where I need it to be, and just where I need it to be in the center of the target. And there it is, right in the eyepiece. Wow. So Jupiter is now centered in the eyepiece. That's really spectacular. I can see the banding structure, see some of the moons. Really spectacular. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is take my observing chair. And I showed you this last time. Very versatile, very nice piece of equipment. Essential accessory when you're going to be out observing. And I'm just going to get my chair set, and I'm going to literally get comfortable so that I can sit at the eyepiece and just watch Jupiter for the night. So just got to make sure I get the right height here. That should do it. And now I can just sit. Oh man, spectacular. I can see the Jovian moons, Europa Callisto. Wow. It's like Callisto and Io are very close to each other tonight, and I can see some of the banding structure on Jupiter. Just a spectacular night. Get the chair, make sure it's in the right position. And then yeah, I can just sit here because the telescope tracks. The key is now I'm looking for the great red spot. Seeing is still not the best tonight, but it still isn't bad. Wow. And if it gets out of position a little bit, I can just tweak it with my knobs. Just a little bit. But other than that, I've done my polar alignment correctly. It should just track with Jupiter all night long. So that's it. Just a quick look here at my 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain on a fork mount equatorial wedge, polar aligned, looking at Jupiter for the night. And it's a great option. Again, if you're looking at brighter objects, or if you just want to stare at something for the duration of the night. A little bit more cumbersome though than my 10-inch Dobsonian, which is really a quick and dirty telescope. You just want to get it set up and look at something. This one is a little bit more involved, and it's not easy to get this to a dark sky site. But if you have it in your garage and you can just roll it out quickly, it can still be good for a night when you just want to get a quick look at something. So, seen both ends. 10-inch Dobsonian, 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. Two different options on a 10-inch scope. Whew, warm night.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing here. So I'm not sure how much of that you could actually see. And I apologize for any of the audio issues, but two specific examples of what I would consider good options possibly for a starter scope. So most of us, you know, if somebody's going to come to us and recommend what type of telescope, it's either a 6-inch, an 8-inch, or possibly a 10-inch Dobsonian. I bought that 10-inch used a few years ago. Lady bought it new, used it once or twice, didn't really get familiar with it, and it sat in her bedroom for about 10 years collecting dust. Finally posted something on our website, and I just picked it up that way. So all of my telescopes are used, and that's typically what happens. People buy it new, try it out, figure out it's not for them, and then they just look to offload it, and you can pick it up for, you know, roughly half of what it would typically retail for. So love the Dobsonian. Again, I use my 10-inch Dobsonian probably most frequently, but it does get old trying to move it all the time because it only, you know, it doesn't track. So that's why the 10-inch on a clock drive is nice when you can focus on one object and just have it track. But I own the 8-inch version of that Schmidt-Cassegrain also, and I'm looking to get rid of the 10-inch because it's a little big and it's a little cumbersome. And since I have the 8-inch and it does just as well and it's more portable, I probably will stick with that one. So anyway, that's just a specific example. So does anybody have any questions or comments? I'll just open it up here a minute.
I have to confess, you had me scared when you pointed that Dobsonian to the sun, and I could see the reflection of the sun in the walls of the tube. Oh man, you had me scared here.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention that. To get that shot, I had to do it earlier in the morning when the sun was on the horizon, because during the day there's more distractions. And that did actually, that thought did come to me after I was done shooting that. Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare scenario. So full disclosure, never point a telescope, any telescope, and certainly one like that as a bigger mirror in the direction of the sun. So that was a close call. Definitely would I'd be more careful the next time I shot a video like that. So yeah, that was a little bit of a scare. Anybody else?
Jeremy, there's a question in the chat about the cost of your 2 telescopes.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So those 2 10 inches, I bought the Dobsonian for $350 used. And then I picked up the 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain actually for $400. And Rick gave me a stellar deal on it. Retail, those would be at least twice as much, maybe more. So this is why, again, if you're just getting started in this hobby, a great resource to buy a telescope is an astronomical society. A lot of them have swap meets. We should actually consider doing one ourselves, where once a year people get together that are part of the community and just have a meeting where they swap equipment. So if you have something you're looking to sell or looking to buy, you take it to the swap meet and then pick it up. Or we have a Facebook group, and people often post equipment, whether it's used telescopes or eyepieces. We have a guy in our group, Chuck Evans, who actually does this. He buys used astro equipment and then resells it. And he often posts several of the stuff that he has for sale on our Facebook group. And I actually bought some of my eyepieces from him, and he has other telescopes as well. So if you get stuff used, you can get it at a substantial discount. In fact, true confession, I just picked up a 14-inch Celestron from a colleague of Rick's who bought it, used it for a while, and didn't want it anymore and was just looking to offload it. Not necessarily shopping for that type of telescope, but the deal I was able to get used, I just couldn't turn it down. So I picked that up. It's in his workshop right now. He's working on it. I may not use that telescope for several months, maybe even a year, but certainly for something down the road. I plan to be in this hobby for the rest of my life. So yeah, getting this stuff used. The actual telescope itself, it's certainly a Dobsonian in terms of bang for your buck, aperture size for what you're going to pay is typically the best deal. The money's going to go in the glass. So that's where the money goes, whether it's your eyepieces or if you buy a good refractor telescope that has lenses, you're going to pay a lot for those, a lot more for those than you would for a reflector telescope that has mirrors. So short answer is $350 for the used 10-inch Dobsonian and $400 for the used 10-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain. That's what I paid. So the Telrad, yeah, I guess it's like an HUD on a fighter jet. It doesn't magnify the image. It just puts a 3-ring target in a line of sight view. And if I know where an object is in the sky, I can just basically eye it with my Telrad, and then I use my viewfinder to hone in on it. So I do use a right angle viewfinder. Yeah, I know we typically recommend a straight through viewfinder, but because I have the Telrad, I can get very close if I know where the object is in the sky. And then I can use my right angle viewfinder to kind of hone in on it. So here's a quick story. One night I was out observing and I was looking for M3. It's a globular cluster in Canis Venatici, just below the handle of the Big Dipper. Had a real hard time finding it. This is back when I was still going through the Messier catalog. And I mean, I struggled for several minutes and I was getting frustrated. And, you know, it's a tougher Messier object to find because just kind of where it's positioned in the sky, you really got to know where it is. And it's hard to star hop to it because there aren't any bright stars within the vicinity. So I got close with my Telrad. I looked through my viewfinder, and because it magnifies that section of the sky just a little bit, I was able to detect an object that was fuzzy and it didn't look like a star. And so I just moved my telescope to that target, and that's how I found it. So that's kind of my technique now for finding objects. Is I use my Telrad to get close, and then I use my viewfinder to basically hone in and look for something fuzzy that's not necessarily a star, and it's worked pretty well for me. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Ann and let her talk about Stellarium.
There is another question, Jeremy.
Okay.
Are all eyepieces interchangeable mounting wise?
So there are 2-inch eyepieces and then 1.25-inch eyepieces. And the 1.25-inch are typically compatible with a 2-inch adapter also. So the lower power ones or the higher power ones that I use are typically 1.25-inch, and the smaller ones are 1.25-inch also. And I have an adapter ring that fits into the 2-ring mount for that. So it's one of those two. It's either going to be 2-inch or it's 1.25-inch. So, and then there's an adapter that goes in for the 1.25-inch eyepieces as well. And my ethos, for instance, my 8-inch ethos and then my 13-inch ethos are compatible with either one. They can be 1.25-inch or they can go to 2 inches. And typically for my 13-inch, which is the one I use most frequently, my 13-inch ethos eyepiece, I just use the 2-inch. So I take the 1.25-inch adapter out, and then I just stick the ethos into the 2-inch ring, whether it's my 20-inch or my 10-inch focuser for my 20-inch or my 10-inch Dobsonian. And then I can just use the ethos that way as well. Does that answer your question? All right. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, I will turn it over to Ann.
Okay, thank you. I had it on mute. I'm sorry. It is Friday night. Thanks, Jeremy. Those videos were really great. I'd like to watch them again. I guess I can catch them on YouTube. So I'm going to show just very briefly the program Stellarium, which is a planetarium program. And Jeremy mentioned how you could use that or use the Pocket Atlas. I like Stellarium. We use it in the classroom at Rhodes to teach students, how to find objects in the sky. You can actually simulate motion with Stellarium, and that allows you to observe some interesting phenomena. But tonight I'm just going to show you what the sky is going to look like tomorrow, so that if you come out to Shelby Farms tomorrow, what are some of the objects that you might be able to see through the telescopes that people are bringing. And so you should be able to see this view that I'm showing you, and you see like a barn out here and the grass and the trees and the sky. And I have set this up for tomorrow. You can see the date in the bottom right, and I've got it at 7:30 right now. And we're looking north, so you'll see a yellow N, which means that this is as if you're standing out in the field and you're looking towards the north. And with this program, you can use your mouse to just drag, and it's as if you're turning your head one way or the other. So if I turn my head to the right, I'd be looking northeast. I can continue going around to the east. I can continue going to the south. So it's as if I'm actually turning around on the ground, and I can go all the way around the horizon with this program. I can also look down, which isn't very interesting. Maybe there's a firefly, or I can look straight up, which might be more interesting. And I can also zoom in and zoom out using a scroll wheel on a mouse or a keyboard. There are lots of features in Stellarium. It has a little bit of a learning curve. You can learn the basics very quickly, 10 minutes. But to learn some of the really neat features, you might need to spend, a couple of sessions, but it's well worth it. And when I say worth it, I mean it really is, because this is actually free. This is a free program that's available for all platforms. So Windows, Mac, Linux, everything. You can download this for free, and it's kept updated, and I find it very, very useful. So I have set this up for tonight. You have several toolbars. You can change what's displayed on the screen, and I'll show you some of those features. But I thought we would just start kind of right at sunset, and we would just kind of look around and first talk about the planets. So I've turned off some features, so we're just going to see the planets. And if we look towards the west tomorrow night, right after sunset, you may be able to see, I'm zooming in here, just following the sun is the planet Mercury. And maybe if we have a good shot of the western horizon, we'll be able to see this tomorrow. I've seen it a few times. And then a little bit higher in the sky at sunset, we have the planet Venus. And I can center on Venus, and I can scroll and zoom in, all the way in. And this is showing what the phase of Venus will be like tomorrow night at 7:36. So tomorrow's phase for Venus is a nice gibbous phase, and I'm hoping someone might have a telescope where we can actually take a look at the phase of Venus. The phases of Venus were one of Galileo's great observations that led him to become a proponent of the heliocentric universe. We'll be able to actually do 2 of those observations tomorrow night, but the first one is the phases of Venus. Galileo's observations, the only way the observed phases of Venus would work were if Venus was going around the sun and the Earth were then going around the sun as well.
Hey, Ann, are you moving the screen? I'm only seeing, at least on my screen, a fixed image of the Stellarium. So I'm not seeing any movement or any zooming or anything of that nature. You're moving, and I see your cursor, but not the change of the picture.
Can anyone else see that I'm zooming in and out?
I see a fixed image also. Still showing the view of the northern sky.
Interesting. Let me see if I can, maybe because I'm trying to full screen mode here.
Yeah,
what about
that's
now?
better. That, yeah,
okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had that in full screen mode. I didn't know that was a glitch. As I said, this is a free program, so sometimes there are little glitches. So now can you see that I'm scrolling?
Yes, it's
Okay.
perfect.
So we were looking towards the west. Again, I'll zoom in quickly. If you didn't get to see the phase of Venus and you want to see it tomorrow, it'd be worth checking it out. So there is Venus in its gibbous phase tomorrow night, which I hope we'll be able to observe. So zooming out, so we have Mercury just following the sun, Venus, the moon will be very close to Mercury tomorrow night, and Venus. And we can zoom in, and if you saw the moon the last couple of nights, you know we're in waxing crescent phase. With the smoke we've had from California, it was a beautiful reddish hue tonight. Tomorrow will be a little bit larger crescent. I think Monday is the first quarter moon, so we're gaining illumination. And that should be a very nice view tomorrow night, good shadows on the terminator. As we scroll around to the south and then to the southeast, we have Jupiter and Saturn out this weekend. So if we zoom in on Jupiter, Jeremy was working on this one in his telescope, so it's good for us to see it here. So tomorrow night is kind of spectacular because, well, every night with Jupiter is spectacular, but tomorrow night, the 4 Galilean moons are all on the same side of the planet. So that's going to be kind of a neat view for us. And they're actually in order of the size of their orbit, with Io closest to the planet, then Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. So that's kind of unusual to see them like that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And you can see, can't see the great red spot at this particular time, but that rotation is just 20 hours or so. And then if we move a little bit higher into the south, we have Saturn tomorrow. It's just going to be a wonderful night. I hope everyone can come out. And so if we take a look at Saturn, we can see what the orientation of the rings will be and where some of the larger moons will be. Titan is sometimes visible. I think it will be tonight. The skies we've been having lately are just been spectacularly clear. So we should be able to see the largest moon of Jupiter, Saturn, sorry, Titan. And of course you can see those rings occasionally in some large telescopes, which I hope we'll have out tomorrow night. You can see the division in the rings, which would be pretty spectacular. So I'm hoping that will be visible. And that's all for planets. So now let's advance the time a little bit, and I'm going to turn on some features. I'm going to turn on sort of constellation or asterism lines, and I'm going to label those asterisms or constellations so that you can see them. Stellarium will also let you put in some of the mythological figures. I think it gets a little busy, but occasionally it's nice to see, you know, how is Cassiopeia really a queen sitting in her chair, or how is Ursa Major a bear? And then you can turn those on and see that. So if we start in the north, I'm going to advance the time, and you can change the rate at which time progresses. So this is normal rate, which of course you can hardly tell. And the more times you click, the faster it progresses. So you can see how the stars rotate counterclockwise around Polaris as the night goes on. So now it's about, what, 10 o'clock? I think this has moved a little bit. We'll go, 8 o'clock, sorry. So 8:30, it'll be nice and dark. Let's see what we can see tomorrow. Of course, in the north, we should see Polaris at an altitude of about 35 degrees. That's our latitude. And it might be easiest, though, to start with a brighter constellation. And so here in the northwest is the asterism, the Big Dipper. Hopefully everyone will be able to recognize that. And I've been out at Shelby Farms, and I think you can see all of the stars in the Big Dipper. And you may remember that the bottom two stars of the Dipper are the pointer stars, and they point to Polaris, which is at the handle of the Little Dipper up here. So that should be a pretty nice view. And then near Polaris, we have Cassiopeia, the question mark or the W or the upside down M, however you want to call it. That's a very visible constellation out at Shelby Farms. And then up above, we have Cephas, which is a king in his chair, and Cassiopeia is his queen. But we should be able to see this. We can definitely see the square, and I think I have seen the fifth star as well. As we scroll around to the west, we should be able to see a very bright star. This is Arcturus. And the way to remember that is that the handle of the Big Dipper arcs to Arcturus. And then it speeds on to Spica, but the star Spica has already set. So we won't be able to see that at this time tomorrow night. But Arcturus is a very bright star, a very reddish kind of star, and very prominent in tomorrow's sky. If we go up overhead, there is an interesting, there it is, asterism to look at, and it involves these three very bright stars. That's not the third one. There it is. So Altair, Vega, and Deneb are three very, very bright stars. And tomorrow night, they're going to be high overhead, almost directly at our zenith, but they make a very prominent triangle in the summer evening sky. And this is referred to as the summer triangle. So that'll be something that's kind of fun to look at tomorrow night. It'll be directly overhead, very high in the sky. You're going to crane your neck to see that one. As we keep scrolling around, we'll have various constellations that we can see. Hercules will be high in the west. We can see the Great Square of Hercules. There are some interesting deep sky objects in here. Jeremy mentioned M13. It's in that constellation. Now in Memphis, we can occasionally see Sagittarius, which is the teapot. You may be able to see this is the spout, and here's the handle, and tip you over and pour you out. I have seen this even from the Rhodes campus in the summertime, so I think it'll be nice tomorrow night. Hopefully we will be able to make out the stars of Sagittarius. There's a bright star that Sagittarius pours into called Antares, and that is part of the constellation Scorpio. So hopefully we'll be able to see at least Antares tomorrow. I've never had much luck locating the other stars in Scorpio. As we go around, I also wanted to point out the Great Square of Pegasus, which will be in the east tomorrow night at this time. So there's the eastern horizon. I can zoom out and get an idea of how high it is. But the Great Square of Pegasus is very visible, as is this arm that will be stretching down to the northeast. This is the Andromeda arm of Pegasus, and it's in that arm that we can find the Andromeda galaxy. So now I'm going to turn on the deep sky objects. And you see there are different symbols for different types of deep sky objects in this program. Red ellipses are galaxies. So we can zoom in. And so if you can find the arm of Andromeda, and you know where to move up. These two stars, you move up and you can see the Andromeda Galaxy. And hopefully some of the larger telescopes tomorrow will be able to see a fuzzy little blob that is the Andromeda Galaxy. It won't look like this. This is a beautiful picture, probably from the Hubble telescope, but it will be an entire galaxy. So it's worth taking a look at that. There are lots of different deep sky objects out tomorrow night, and I could go through them all, but it would take a while. I think it might be best if you ask the telescope operator, you know, what is the object you're looking at? There are some great globular clusters out tomorrow. One is M13, which Jeremy mentioned, and it is in, well, actually, I'll show you how you can search in this program. It's pretty nice. So there it is in the constellation Hercules in the square. There is the globular cluster that Jeremy was talking about with his telescopes. We should be able to see that tonight. There are a lot of different globular clusters tomorrow, so hopefully you'll be able to see several of them and you'll be able to note some differences. Globular clusters are just groups of old stars that are gravitationally bound, and some are very dense and some are a little bit less dense. They take up a different amount of the sky and they have different numbers of stars, and some of them are quite beautiful. I think all of them are quite beautiful, but M13 is one of the best to view, and it's going to be visible tomorrow night. So I'm very excited about that. And if anyone wants me to look at a particular object, just let me know. But I know it's getting late here, and we all want to go outside because it's so nice tonight. So I'll end there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Very informative demonstration. This is a program I need to use more. I think what's really cool about Stellarium is you can pick a specific date and see what the sky looks like, see what the phases of the moon are, what the planets are, even the orientation of the moons of Jupiter. So yeah, this is really an essential tool for anybody doing planning an observing session. So does anybody have any questions? Hang on, we got a couple in the chat here. Let's see here. Okay. So tomorrow night is going, it looks like it's going to be a spectacular night. I'm getting excited about it already. I mean, we have a shot at 3, possibly 4 planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, possibly Mercury. We've got a crescent moon. I think the waxing crescent phase is the best phase to look at for the moon because you see so much detail. And at certain times of the year, depending on the seeing conditions, you can also see the Earthshine effect. I think it's a little bit too far along now to see that, but between the planets, the moon, and some of the deep sky objects that we'll have a shot at tomorrow, it should just be a spectacular evening. I don't want to say too much because the weather gods might hear me and jinx our plans as they have routinely this year, but after several clouded out observing sessions, we have had just really a week straight of spectacular weather. So in fact, we did have an impromptu observing session a couple nights ago at Burton's. Mark called it. We were out there, a couple of us. The good news is we had crystal clear skies and great observing or great seeing conditions. The bad news is we had terrible dew, and my telescopes were dewed up early in the evening. In fact, I brought one of my Schmidt Cassegrains over, my 8-inch, and Freddy in his presentation mentioned how they are susceptible to dew, and that's certainly true with my telescope. I mean, everything was fogged up, the end of the telescope, the corrector plate, as well as the eyepieces. So yeah, that certainly is something that you have to contend with. You have to battle the elements when you go out at certain times of the year. So we did have a question about Stellarium. Is it worth getting the upgrade for Stellarium? Ann, did you want to comment on that?
Sure, I just put that in the chat, but I've never found that I needed any of the upgrades. And we do a lot in the astronomy course. We simulate motions and eclipses, and we watch the sun move through the constellations for a year, and I've never found that I needed any additional features.
And it's available on, there's an app for it also, correct? I mean, you can use it on your phone, you can use it on an iPad. I know I have it on my phone. So do you use it pretty regularly on, let's say when you're out in the field on either a phone or a pad?
I have some other apps that I prefer. Go Sky Watch is one that I really like, but I think I must have about 7 or 8 on my iPad, and I just switch around.
Yeah. Whichever one's most convenient. So,
Jeremy?
Yes.
Can I make a comment? You covered the Dobsonian and you covered the Smith-Cassegrain.
Mm-hmm.
What you didn't cover which is a great beginner scope, is something like the Red Cat. For a little bit twice about what you were paying, you end up getting a very small telescope. In fact, it's smaller if you take the dew shield off. And what it gets you is extremely high quality optics. So it's not huge, but because the optics are so good, you get a really phenomenal image. And you can use a relatively inexpensive mount because it is not heavy. You can see you talked about how easy yours was to your car. This one is hardly even an exercise dumbbell to go off and use. But I will also have to emphasize Freddy's comment, spend the money on the mount, because if you do get a mount which will work for this, and then you decide you have aperture envy and you buy a bigger telescope, you will spend more money on getting a better mount.
Absolutely. And it'll be a little easier to carry that one on a plane than it would either an 8-inch or a 10-inch Dobsonian.
It even comes in a nice little carrying case.
Yep. Today, because light pollution is so ubiquitous, mobility and being able to transport it to a suitable sky is of the utmost importance. In fact, that's more important than probably the actual telescope itself. So
and it accepts filters, 2-inch filters built inside it, such that you then can just put in a nebulizer filter or something like that, and then get rid of a lot of your light pollution, which I need here in Houston.
Absolutely. We need it here in Memphis too. So most of us are in urban areas with a lot of light pollution. And if we're going to do any kind of backyard observing, it's essential to have, light pollution filters or whatever type of filter you're looking, you need to use to look for whatever object. The other night we were out at Burton Sugar Farm. We were looking at the Veil Nebula with one of Brian's filters too. And then I know, Freddy, you have several filters too. You have hydrogen alpha and some of the others for either the nebula, or you do a lot of solar observing. So today mobility, I think is one of the keys for being able to do this hobby. I would say the quality of skies, being able to get to a suitable dark sky location, even with a set of binoculars, would be better than maybe having a large telescope at home in your driveway. I mean, I can get my 10-inch out. I could even get my 20-inch out, but when you got street lights everywhere, you're very limited in what you can see. So,
but again, that's if you're doing visual observing with your eyepiece. If you are using the telescope and going to astrophotography, you can end up using the HA filters, hydrogen alpha filters, and then multiple exposures. And I'm blown away by what I'm able to get with that.
Yeah. Multiple exposures and then stacking, right?
Yeah. As we're speaking, I'm taking 500 shots of Andromeda.
Wow.
And it's a nice Andromeda one.
And you have light pollution all around you, but by the time you're done doing your image processing,
it's gone.
You'll see spectacular detail. So there you go. Backyard astrophotography, right?
Do what you have to do.
Do what you have to do. Anyone else? We're coming up on 10 o'clock here. So I'm sure people are getting eager to wrap up here. So I will go ahead and close it out. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here a second. So I want to thank Freddy and Ann for taking the time to present. And I want to thank everyone else, of course, for coming out tonight to our meeting. Again, these are our details in our website. You can find us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, please join our email list if you'd like to receive notices. Got a busy month coming up. Again, tomorrow night, September the 11th, We're going to be at Shelby Farms, P5 parking area. So if you're local to Memphis and you want to get out and do some observing, by all means, come on out. If you have a telescope and you want some help learning how to use it or set it up, we'll have some of us there early to do some mentoring before we do the actual observing. So again, that's tomorrow night, Shelby Farms, P5 parking. And again, next month, we're going to be showing a pilot of the documentary film Luminous. So we'll send out notices regarding that as well. That's October the 8th. And that will be a Zoom call, not an in-person meeting. So everyone who's on will have the opportunity to see that as well. So we're finishing strong here this year. The next 3 meetings, we've got some great presenters, great topics as well, including a great talk on astrophotography for our December 3 meeting. So we'll send a notice out about that as well. So I know we've been virtual and haven't been able to meet in person, but there are some benefits to doing the Zoom thing. So again, be sure to join our email list if you haven't already. And I'll send links to these 2 documents as well, which is the sky chart for should say September, even though it says August. That's a typo. And then also our membership application. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank everyone for coming out. And we will see some of you tomorrow night, and the rest of you we will see again October the 8th for the live screening of Luminous. Thank you very much. You all have a great evening.